The Voice Teacher Podcast.
Hello, welcome to the Voice Teacher Podcast. I am Sam Johnson, and I'm joined here with Aimee Geddes. We are going to be talking about some of our favorite mix singers today.
Woohoo! Well, I mean, it kind of makes sense because we are the international voice teachers of mix. And I think sometimes people don't understand what that really means or what does that sound like? How do you know somebody's mixing? How do you know what qualifies? And, you know, as Dean Kalin often says, the mixed tent is very big. There's a lot of things that can qualify. There's a wide range of what's mixed, what's not, what's belt mix, what's head mix, what, you know, you could call it anything. But really, if you just think of the gradual progression of the voice, moving smoothly without flipping, breaking, or cracking, keeping the intensity consistent and the timbre consistent, I mean, there's a lot of things that qualify as mix, if that's your definition.
Yeah, I really like defining mix as a result kind of quality, like what you just said, rather than as a here are all of the things with the registration that get you to that mix. As much as we can know more about how the voice works and everything, when we're in the studio listening to someone sing, we don't know all of that. Like, even if we have them hooked up to Voce Vista or with an EGT or EGG is hooked up and all of that, like, we just don't know everything. But I sure know if it sounds like the same voice quality as it's ascending through someone's range. So what would you say is not mix?
Okay, so in IFTOM, we've talked about this kind of scale thing of 0 to 10. If 0 is absolutely like no chord closure, you're not going to have any sound. And if 10 is so much chord closure, so much force that it's just like, you technically wouldn't have any sound there either. Okay. And if 5 is 50-50, balance between airflow and muscle, head voice, chest voice, that resonance and all those things. Okay. Then if 5 is a mix, then really can mix be anything between 2 and 7 or 3 and 6, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 8's really pushing it. We're kind of going out and it's more of a, you know, getting to the scream end. If we're below 3, are we getting too breathy or too much of a back resonance and not a resonance in the front? We're not getting any of that third harmonic, second formant kind of thing. What do you think? I want to hear. So I would say mix would be outside of those ranges, but what do you say?
Yeah, going back to SLS terminology, right? You at the beginning of every lesson would give a 5-tone which I think most of us still do, just to kind of see what their main tendency is. And they would delineate it as pull chest, flip, no chest, mix. That kind of sticks with me because as I'm doing that, if you hear someone and they're like, oh, that's kind of pull chest, or it kind of sounds like they're yelling, that is not mixing. If you hear someone suddenly flip, that is not mixing. If you hear someone that doesn't really have enough of a head voice or of a chest voice to start mixing, because mix requires multiple ingredients, then that's not mixing. And from each of those, there are pretty straightforward exercises to get toward a 5 or whatever, right? Because on each of those, you could be like, okay, up until this part of their range, they're at a 7, and then suddenly they can't hold it, and now they're at a 2. Does that mean that they're flipping, or does that mean that they're pulling chest? And there's so much kind of crossover with it, but at least it gives you a few different ways to start integrating their voice. So I hear it mostly as like either you're mixing, you're yelling, or you're flipping when you don't want to. That's how I like that. I kind of generalize it. But at the same time, a good mixer can probably get a yelly sound if they want a yelly sound, but maybe keep it in the mix, or go to a real pull chest mix momentarily. But if it's controlled and then they're able to come back to something else, it's like the whole performance might be considered mixy, but in that one moment, like they're pulling chest. So much of this terminology stuff is really confusing, I find. And you can ask a lot of people outside of IVTOM, outside of just contemporary voice teaching, what mix is, and they'll have very different opinions with it. So I've really tried to get it as simple as possible. it sounds kind of like the same voice all the way through, or you're yelling or you're flipping. Usually one of those.
Right. But I mean, you think about it too, because even sometimes if you just go as simple as sounding the same without any flipping, cracking, or breaking, there are people out there with vocal cords of steel that can pretty much yell all the way through there. You know, not everyone can do that, but it can be. So I think you kind of have to take in the perspective, just because you don't hear it flipping, cracking, or breaking doesn't necessarily mean that they're in a perfect balance either.
Oh, exactly. And
they're just.
So a few weeks ago, I had a really, really wonderful opportunity to teach. I had one lesson working with one of the leads of a touring Broadway cast, and
Cool.
It was amazing. And he was just an incredible singer. I mean, he's singing really hard stuff every day. And I asked him, like, what's challenging about singing? And he's like, singing's easy. I'm like, okay, cool. Why are you here? But I started just kind of going through the regular stuff that I do. And yeah, he could sing pretty much anything. But up around the second bridge, everything got a little too wide. Larynx started rising, got a little extra pressure. He could still get through it. But when he got up above about a C5, then there was a noticeable difference in the tonal quality, in like a this doesn't sound as good kind of way. And so I was just constantly telling him, like, yeah, I know that this way has worked for you. You've been singing very high level for a long time, but I want you to be able to sing for 50 more years. And I think if you're able to do it this other way, that you're going to be more likely to do that. So was the other way mixing, even though it was generally the same quality up to like the A? I don't know. I might say like it might have been just a like too heavy mix with a little bit of too wide vowels, a little bit, you know, just everything a little bit off. Is that still under the mixed tent? Yes, but because it wasn't like as efficient as it could be, I wouldn't say it was like the best mix I've ever heard. So yeah, it's a really confusing thing sometimes.
I like that word you used, efficient. What's the most efficient way to get there? Because I think really, if you boil it down, mix is the most efficient way to sing. Because if you fall out of your mix, meaning you're either yelling or flipping, right, unintentionally, you've lost your balance. And I don't know, like walking is easier when you're balanced. So singing is easier when you're balanced. It's kind of one of those things. And it's more efficient. Like hopping is a lot harder than walking. And so I like that. Just the term efficiency. I think that's a good way to boil it down. Like, and I tell that to my students too, like, that's great. You can still get there, but it's not as efficient. It's going to wear you out faster. So if you get more balanced, you're going to be more efficient and it's going to make and sound better.
And the more confident you are with the most efficient way of singing, then you can kind of go away a little bit and be like, I know I can get away with doing this 3 times a night and I won't wreck my voice and not be able to sing tomorrow. And then if you really prefer a less mixy, less efficient sound, then go ahead. But as long as you know where home base is and you know the kind of risks that you're taking, then go ahead. Another thing that's kind of confusing with all of this is the idea of a sound quality remaining consistent all the way through someone's range, because there is going to be change. Like there are just going to be different parts of the range that have slightly different qualities. And if we can balance a voice so that those changes in quality are never like sudden, drastic changes, but just really subtle shifts all the way through the range, I still consider that mix. Because for me, I, for the longest time, was trying to make my voice sound the exact same all the way through my range. And it just made me pull chest more. So it's fun how you can hold this idea of like, I don't want to pull chest. I know it needs to go up into my head. I know it needs to mix. And at the same time, there's no way that that can actually be a mix because it doesn't sound like chest voice at this part to me.
Right.
Yeah.
So I had a similar experience. Yes.
Very flexible. Yeah.
Well, just, yeah, that same kind of thinking that if, even though really I was probably pulling chest more than mixing, I thought I was mixing because I could go a lot higher with that belty chesty sound than I could previously. So on some level, yes, I was mixing, but not as efficiently as I could have been.
So that's kind of mix.
Did you get that? That was really clear. We like to be clear as mud.
We're clear as mud. Let's look at some singers. Who did you bring in as an example of a wonderful mixer?
This came up in a lesson because somebody was asking for, they said, I'm always having a hard time with this part of my voice, this mid-range. She said, can you give me a song that will help me work that? And I said, oh, I have the perfect song for you. And it's called Safer from First Date. Are you familiar with that?
Mm-mm.
So this is the studio recording. So obviously it's going to be, you know, really nice. But I listened to a live recording of her singing the exact same song. It was like one of those Good Morning America type of settings where they're out in the square and the acoustics are terrible and they're fighting all the things. And she still sounded great. That was a good clue to me that this girl has it together. She's fabulous.
When you felt so alone since the moment of birth, and you've struggled to find your own true sense of worth, when it seems there is no one across this whole earth to depend upon, you carry on just like you always do, 'cause it's safer to rely on you. Oh, it's safer to rely on you.
And I'm going to skip ahead to the end just so you can hear where it gets what most people would start yelling at, but she keeps it in balance.
And I wonder why I'm still a bundle of doubt. And sometimes I wanna just stand up and shout. Just commit and deal with it before your life flies by. Don't let your life fly by.
Anyway,
Yeah, so I actually have
thoughts?
worked on that with one student before. I forgot,
Okay.
but it's a lovely song. It's interesting in that first part of the clip that you put, there were some moments that I think we could say, oh, that released a little bit more than the rest of the stuff preceding it, so it sounded
Mhm.
like a minor flip. Just because it's like that big enough of a difference.
Mhm.
I don't think it was a flip. It still sounded like
No.
quite connected to me, but whenever
Yeah.
you hear that sudden shift of like, oh, this is a kind of different color, that starts priming me to be like, is this on purpose? Are they
Mhm.
flipping? Is this just like a color shift within a mix? And then like one measure after, she did the same notes again and it sounded like way beltier. Does the placement change? Does it still sound like mix? I don't know, but I would say that that's a mix because she was able to go back and forth with it, and it's the flexibility within that to me proves that it is the mix. Where I've had a student before ask like, "Is this mix? Is this mix? Is this mix?" And it's like one moment of a thing, and it's like I don't know because I kind of need the context of everything else to say yes, this is mix.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I know the moments that you're talking about is kind of right at the end of that first little bit. That one note that just is kind of more, just a little bit higher, but not way high. But I feel like if she were to keep going, it wouldn't sound flippy because to me, it's just like that natural shift that needs to happen. Is she's just sort of brightening up. She's slowly transitioning into a little bit more head voice. So to me, I don't think that sounds flippy. Like, I feel like she's a great example because like you say, in the whole context of the song, she's able to go everywhere she needs to, but I feel like she never really goes way far either way. You know, she stays in that central zone. She stays in that, man, I feel like a sports commentator right now. Okay, she stays in that place.
She stays in the pocket.
She stays in the pocket. She's getting things. She doesn't miss those shots. You know, she's right there. She's got that ring on the upper end, even when she's really powerful, like at the bridge, out of control, I feel safe on the ground. When it, you know, where a lot of people would be tempted to just kind of yell that, and it could be justified because of the emotion in the song. That's totally acceptable. But she doesn't have to, and so she doesn't. She keeps it in the efficient place. Her voice is very efficient. It's very balanced. She always has that nice ring on the upper end without letting go of the bottom. I think that's another way to describe mix, is that kind of balance, those two sides of the coin happening simultaneously. Anyway, Kate, I'm excited to hear yours.
Beyonce.
Who'd you pick? Oh, yay! I love her. She's the
I
best.
I love Beyonce. I did not get tickets to go see her because I can't spend $3,000 to go see Beyonce. But I really love her. And she, I think, is a wonderful example of the versatility of a healthy mix, of a good setup, because she uses so many different colors. So many. Like, there are some moments that she sounds like a trained, legit classical singer, but then she always blends that down into like these really wonderful mixy, belty things, and there's never a moment that's like, oh, suddenly that's a different voice, right? Even though you can look at the very top and the very bottom and it sounds like quite different, the ability to blend between those two, to me, is the mix.
Yes.
She also uses those growls really frequently. She can growl and it just sounds wonderful. I cannot make that sound. Very jealous of her. Not the way that she does. Not the way that she does. I figured out I can kind of do a false chord growl if I'm like playing with my dogs and I start barking at them, kind of. It's this.
We'll see another primal sound.
Kind of sound, but the style that Beyonce uses, absolutely not.
Well, do you have a clip that you wanted to share first?
Not of the growl, but I do want to share just a little bit of Love on Top to show how, as you go higher and higher and higher, you can, there's a shift in tone quality, but it can still sound kind of the same. So this first part, this is, I believe, the first chorus. So before it starts going higher and higher and higher, but it will at least give us a idea of what her voice sounds like, right? Like, just what quality are we trying to maintain as we go higher and higher and higher?
Baby, it's you. You're the one I love. You're the one I need. You're the only one I see. Come on, baby, it's you. You're the one that gives your all. You're the one that always calls. When I need you, make everything stop. Finally, you put my love on top.
That's kind of the first quality. The highest note she goes to is the E. So same note as we saw in the one before, but it is a very different quality how she approaches it. She maintains so much more weight than the last singer does. And then she also, there were a few examples of that growl that I really like in her voice there. I also noticed on her E, her mouth was huge when she went up to that. Just really, really massive mouth, which when a lot of people would try to sing that, I think using that large of a mouth would make them yell. But because she's so good at all of the internal shifts, she can kind of do whatever she wants with the front of her mouth.
That's an interesting concept for people to get, I find, especially when you're working with beginning singers. There's no way you can give them that kind of permission to just be like, sure, do whatever you want with the front, as long as the back's in place. Because I remember the first time that I heard that at one of the first IFCHOM conferences, and I went, what? Really? It was so shocking to me to find that concept. And then, but as I've grown as a singer and a teacher, I found that to be absolutely the case, that really, I tell my students, the lips are just the training wheels. It's everything that matters in the back. Everything in the back is what really matters. Because if you think about it, your larynx is here and the sound's got to pass through this part of your vocal tract way before it ever gets to the end of your vocal tract, your lips. So everything that's happening here right around and just above the larynx is way more important than what's happening at the end. I don't know, maybe that's a weird way to say it, but that's how I think of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's a lot of truth in that. And once you know what it feels like to sing in the mix, then you can just kind of start testing the limits of it and opening things up a little bit. And as long as it doesn't totally fall out, then I'd say that's still mixy. But yeah, it is a really weird concept. I remember very clearly the first time someone told me to open my mouth a little bit more while singing, because for years it's like, narrow, narrow, narrow. You're too open, because I'm a chest puller for life. And then I was working with John Henney on All of Me, the John Legend song. And he was like, I think you're narrowing a little too much here. And I was like, what are you talking about? How is that possible? So I opened my mouth a little bit more and it was easier. Who would have thought? John Henney has a good ear for this stuff. So with that, there are moments that she does like a proper flip, right? Come on, baby, it's you. And then she narrows it a lot. It has a very, very different sound quality. That actually, like in the belty stuff, it doesn't go quite as high as I remember it going. I mean, I think the highest note she does with any of that in terms of the mix belt is like that E area. And she just continues to make it sound more and more intense by making it more and more intense, by getting a little bit louder, a little bit more intense, adding more of that growl sound more frequently.
Yeah. Ooh, and I was listening for those growls as you did that. And I'm just sitting here thinking, I want to try this song now. I want to, it's so fun. She's just like, she's incredible. So good. So good. Wow. Yes, I love that. And like you said, like that intensity. And I'm just sitting here thinking, and I think sometimes we do this as singers because we have those kind of like sympathetic mirror neurons or whatever. We kind of imagine how that's going to feel inside our own bodies and try to be like, okay, what does that feel like? Or I identify with that. I get that. Okay. And then we can kind of, I don't know, now it makes me want to go play with it and be like, oh, how can I, I'm not going to sound like Beyonce, right? But how can I kind of find that same placement that she's using? Because that's really exciting. Yeah, that's really great.
Yeah. And going up by just those steps, I think it's a really good test because if the step right before is on the edge of yelling and you go up another step and you don't change anything, it's going to start falling apart really, really quickly. And this just has enough changes with that you have to be set up pretty dang well by the very first time you go up there, or else you're going to have no chance by the end.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's such a contrast from what the other one that we were listening to, the Krysta Rodriguez, how you were saying she was able to kind of push that setup and then again, but then still make it. Whereas, you know, Beyonce's got to be set up from the get-go and stay there, you know, just not
or at least
make any major changes.
Because she's so familiar with her voice, I do think she has a little bit more leeway like Miss Rodriguez, but only because like she can get a little bit more intense and then she knows, oh, for this next part, I can't hold on to this exact same coordination. She still lets it move, even though she's singing like on the edge of what would probably work most of the time there, which to me is just a really, really heavy mix. Very heavy mix.
I love it, but still mix, still within the tent. She doesn't ever fall out. And I love that, like push it, or at least not unintentionally, right?
Exactly.
She's in control. She's making it happen. If she wants a lighter sound, she knows exactly where to get it. But I think there's another kind of element there talking about flipping, right? When we're going up and over into kind of that higher register, it sounds a little headier, may not necessarily be classified as mixed, but it's not like they're letting go. They're not totally changing everything about it. There's still an element of that edginess in there that keeps it connected.
It doesn't suddenly become breathy.
Yeah, it's or really even drop way back. It's just kind of thinner.
Yeah, because her vowels remain like small and like forward, right? The back versus forward a lot of times I think is just tongue placement. And so if your tongue pulls back really, really far to that oh kind of thing, then it's going to sound like a big, big change. And yeah, when she does that, it doesn't suddenly sound ooh. It sounds like she's letting go. And it does sound, I think, a little bit rounder than the rest of what she's doing. But yeah, you're right. There is something that sounds in common enough that it's like, oh yeah, this is the same instrument doing this, even though it's a different enough sound that in isolation, the two next to each other would be like, wow, yeah, that's different. That's the funky thing about mix is like, even to make a sound the same all the way through, there's going to be those little differences. It's just how big of it is that difference. And with her, it's a pretty big difference, but we still hear it as together. And yet pretty much everyone I work with, it's like, wait, I can let it go up into my head like that, but that sounds different. That sounds... and that feels different. Do you want me to do this in chest voice or in head voice? If I get asked that one more time, like just like, neither.
There's no such thing. There's no such thing. Just sing it. Oh, you know, I mean, okay. Well, that is another debate for sure. But yes, I get what you're saying. Yes. I get asked that too. I'm like, well, yeah, we're not even talking about that. Like, don't worry about that. You know, that's not even relevant
but that's
here.
Why I think a lot of people get the idea that placement and registration is the goal that we're looking for with
Mm-hmm.
all of this, where the placement, the registration is there only to get the sound quality that we're after. And so if you ask for the sound quality, the pitch, which is a lot of times just determined by the music that we're singing, the vowel also determined by that, and the volume, like asking for just whatever combination of those three. If you ask for that at a low pitch, like it's going to be a very different coordination. It's going to be a different registration, different placement. If you ask for a really high one, you're probably going to feel it very different. And yet I think a lot of people will hear, oh, that sounds like the same instrument quality enough. Therefore, this high note I need to make feel like this bottom one, rather than letting the feeling take care of itself by asking for a different sound quality. And so whenever I hear someone, especially on a first lesson, be like, do you want me to do this in chest or in mix or in head? I'm like, I don't, all of them, do it in all of them. And I really do just try to get them to show me what each of them are like. And then I'm like, do that one more, I guess. But as much as I can get people to stop thinking about the placement of everything and think more, this is the sound quality we're after, right? Like if you go and you do this in chest, like you're saying you could, that is totally destroying the sound quality that we're looking for, right? Like that is morphing it into a yell rather than letting it have the vowel quality that we're after, which is probably going to be a little different than you want.
Well, no, it's funny. I was at a theater conference years ago, and it was a voice masterclass. They were asking the audience questions about like what you needed to know to be able to sing or this or that. And this girl, like she was in high school. She kept raising her hand and stressing that you needed to know where the breaks in your voice were. You need to know where the breaks in your voice are. You need to know like if you can sing above or below them. I mean, her focus was not at all smoothing out her voice. I don't know who she'd been working with that told her this, that you just need to be aware of your breaks and just sing around them. But it was sad to me. I'm thinking, why fixate on things that feel broken rather than learning to sing through it? Just find that place that feels good and just keep going. Why make a big deal out of it? It's all in your head.
Yeah. I
Not
love
all in
that.
your head, but a lot
I mean,
of it.
so often when someone is like, oh, I think I'm singing on a bridge right there. I have never been like, no, there's not a chance. Every single time someone's like, I think I'm singing on a bridge, I'm like, you are.
Good job.
Every
you
single
did it.
time. Doesn't matter. Because I do look at it as every single step is going to be a small little bridge, a small little change. And some of those changes are more difficult for one person to get through than another, or to accept that that's a thing. But they're all bridges. And yes, it is hard to sing on bridges. Because you
just have to learn to cross them. You just got to take that step, go across the bridge, and it will get you to the other side, but not if you jump off before you even go on the bridge. That was a terrible analogy. Anyway.
I want to think of a joke really fast. It's right on the edge.
We'll just laugh like it was so funny already.
You might have a better idea with it. It's a why did the duck cross the road kind of joke. Why did the something cross the bridge to get to the other side? I don't know. It's there. I'm sure that someone.
Why did the cow cross the road to get to the chicken nuggets on the other side? Something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like
why
the
did
Chick-fil-A
the pitch,
commercials?
Why did the pitch cross the bridge to get to the other side?
Okay. I don't think we'll be opening a comedy club anytime soon. But that was a really good attempt, Sam. I'm really proud of you for trying that.
The fun thing about comedy is that it's always funny. It doesn't matter what you do. It's just always funny.
It's just always funny. Oh, I love it. All right. Thank you so much for joining us on the Voice Teacher Podcast today. We hope you enjoyed examining these voices of Krysta Rodriguez and Beyonce and looking for mix in their voices. We'll hope to do this again. And in the meantime, check out our past episodes of the podcast. You can visit ivtom.org for past conference recordings if you're interested in geeking out with us over all things voice. And what else? Oh, please like, subscribe, follow, leave us a 5-star review, leave comments. And if you want to know more about us, our websites are in the show notes. Sam's at vocalese.net. I'm at breakthrough-studios.com. And you can find IvTom at ivtom.org. voiceteacher.org. So have a great week. We'll see you guys next week.
Thank you for listening to the Voice Teacher podcast, brought to you by IFTOM, International Voice Teachers of Mix. Your co-hosts are Sam Johnson and Aimee Geddes. Learn more about IFTOM at iftom.org and find Sam Johnson at vocalese.net and Aimee Geddes at breakthrough-studios.com. Voiceover and theme song by Maz Mazak, and this podcast is edited by Amber. You have been listening to the Voice Teacher Podcast.